So here we have crayon muncher extraordinaire SciManDan speaking a load of bollocks yet again. In this video, I'm just going to take him up on 2 points of his 5 debunking points of Mark Sargent. The first one is going to be the moon's shadow and the size that the moon's shadow cast during the recent eclipse. One thing you will notice as I play his answer is that he doesn't address this very point. He completely ignores it, as per usual. So you've just listened to that. Clearly, he didn't answer a single point. He goes on about the distance to the moon. We're not talking about the distance to the moon. We're talking about the size of the shadow it casts.
Number 3, eclipse shadow. Mainstream science tells us that the moon is over 2,000 miles wide, and yet during the 2017 American eclipse, no offense, the moon's shadow was only 70 miles wide, a reduction of over 97%. This is what the equivalent of having a 6-foot man walking in front of a wall where his shadow is smaller than an action figure at only 2 inches.
Hang on, let me get this straight. You're comparing celestial mechanics, movements of planetary bodies and the interaction with stars across vast distances unimaginable to the human mind to a man walking in front of a wall.
No, SciManDan, he is not comparing celestial mechanics or the movement of stars. He is talking about the size of the shadow that the moon casts onto the Earth.
That sort of comparison isn't going to cut it, buddy.
Where do we see this in our everyday lives? We've seen a shadow's actual size and some much larger. Where can we see small shadows? The flat Earth community says that the moon is less than 50 miles wide, much closer and the same size as the sun. Isn't this explanation also possible? They had no answer.
Did they show this video to a porcupine in a lab coat or something?
No, they didn't show the video to a porcupine in a lab. They showed the video to SciManDan in the corner of his sweaty little room.
No, that explanation would not be possible. We can prove how far away the moon is.
Hello, SciManDan, hello. Knock, knock, knock. SciManDan, hello. We are not asking how far the moon is away. We're asking for the size of the shadow.
There's at least 2 observations you can do yourself to find this. For Pete's sake, the Greeks did it thousands of years ago.
We're not talking about the Greeks thousands of years ago. We're talking about the size of the shadow, not the distance to the sun. Honestly.
Number 4, moon temperature.
Is that it? Is that all you have? Literally, is that it? Is that your response to question 3? How did this guy even pass comprehension at school if he doesn't understand the 5 points? This is 1 point. 1 point. This is the size of the moon's shadow. And he doesn't address it. What a Burke. Anyway, moving on. In his last point about the Van Allen radiation belts, he goes on to mention how NASA, with their technology in the 1960s and early 1970s, were able to penetrate the Van Allen radiation belts without any problem whatsoever.
Last but not least, the Van Allen belts. A simple yes or no question. Are the Van Allen radiation belts deadly?
Yes, they can be.
If yes, then how did Apollo 11 through 17 make round trips through these belts with only aluminum and plastic as shielding?
Okay, enough of this. The Van Allen belts did pose a problem to the Apollo program, and they knew it would be a risk. They just decided to risk it.
They just decided to risk it. They just decided to put men into space, astronauts into space, and risk it. Is this your claim?
The trajectory of Apollo largely avoided as much of the belts as possible. They attempted to go up above them where the radiation dose was at its lowest.
Any ill effects from the Van Allen radiation belts?
No, now I'm not sure we went far enough out to encounter the Van Allen radiation belt. Maybe we did. I don't know the distance to the Van Allen radiation belt, and if we did, it wasn't a problem. If we were going to encounter it, then we would have had to build the spacecraft and the spacesuit to not give humans a problem. You don't just build something and hope it works. You study to see what the threats are, the environment is, and then you say, how thick do I have to make the metal on the spacecraft so that going through this kind of radiation or these kind of meteoroids, it won't get hurt. And then we build it that way.
The belts are 1,000 miles to 25,000 miles above the Earth.
Then we went right out through them.
No effects on your cells?
We didn't even know it. I don't think anybody, well, maybe somebody said you went through the radiation belt, but we didn't feel it inside, and we didn't get any, added radiation. Then you see them whistling by. Not on our mission, by the way, they hadn't been discovered yet. Then you see them whistling by. Not on our mission, by the way, they hadn't been discovered yet. Then you see them whistling by. Not on our mission, by the way, they hadn't been discovered yet.
This astronaut, who actually, according to NASA, went to the moon, and he didn't even know that he had to pass through the Van Allen radiation belt. You think with all the training that they would have, all the rigorous training over and over, going through the mission every single day, preparing for every kind of eventuality, you would think that NASA, if they had been aware of the Van Allen radiation belt, which apparently they were, you would have thought that the astronauts who were going to go through that would have A, been informed about them, or B, had some training regarding them. Clearly, you don't know what you're talking about, because this astronaut himself didn't even know about the Van Allen radiation belts.
They also spent very little time in them due to their speed on the way to the moon. The shielding of the module also protected the astronauts during the journey, but what they depended on mostly was luck.
But what they depended on mostly was luck?
On average, the astronauts were exposed to around half a rad of radiation during their trip. That's about 5 millisieverts. To put that into context, over the course of a year, you're exposed to around 3 millisieverts of natural radiation. So it really wasn't that much, was it?
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again. But going to Mars should be one of the next series of steps that humans do. The first step should be going back to the moon for a number of technical reasons and exploration reasons, and then after that, Mars, maybe high orbit in Venus atmosphere, maybe going to Europa. There's all kinds of targets to go to, places of interest in our solar system. The only limit to human future is in our own imagination.
Well, that's a great question. The plan that NASA has is to build a rocket called SLS, which is a heavy lift rocket. It's something that is much bigger than what we have today, and it will be able to launch the Orion capsule with humans on board, as well as landers or other components to destinations beyond Earth orbit. Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go. And this new system that we're building is going to allow us to go beyond and hopefully take humans into the solar system to explore. So the moon, Mars, asteroids, there's a lot of destinations that we could go to, and we're building these building block components in order to allow us to do that eventually.
My name is Kelly Smith, and I work on navigation and guidance for Orion. As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation. Radiation like this could harm the guidance systems, onboard computers, or other electronics on Orion. Naturally, we have to pass through this danger zone twice, once up and once back. But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation. Sensors aboard will record radiation levels for scientists to study. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
So here we have SciManDan in his little study in the corner of his room, telling everybody how the world works and how Mark Sargent, after years of research and all the flat earth community, are wrong. And we're still waiting for the answer, mate. Explain the moon's shadow during the eclipse. Anyway, so I just thought I would share this little nugget with you guys, because clearly this guy is so indoctrinated with his own bullshit that he doesn't even realize that he can't even answer a question.